Holy watercolor, Batman, there's a lot of brushes to choose from. Let's see if we can't help you narrow it down just a little bit. Welcome back to the Mind of Watercolor, everybody. Today we're going to talk about brushes. Now, there's a lot of brushes out there, and if you've ever been to an art supply store, you know. And it can be a little bit confusing. So I want to demystify that a little bit, give you some pointers, some ways to cut through the clutter, and just kind of hone in on what it is you need for watercolor. Watercolor kind of is distinctive. What works for oil and acrylic and even gouache, which is a thicker opaque watercolor, doesn't always work for the real wet washy watercolor, okay? Or it's not ideal, let me put it that way. You can paint it with any kind of a brush with watercolor if you want, but to get really good results, there's a few specific types of brushes that you need, and they are very specific to watercolor. So let's get into it. And the good news is you don't need a lot. You only need a handful, maybe 3 or 4 brushes. Hang on to the end. There's an artist whose video I want you to see, and it will kind of prove that point. And you'll see that this is really something that can improve your painting if you pick the right brushes. So when you're looking to get watercolor brushes, this is the place to start. These are rounds. Rounds are probably the most common watercolor brush. They come in a variety of sizes. They will do the lion's share of the work for most watercolor. And once you've got a good selection of rounds and you've determined that you have what you need, these might be what you would go to next. Perhaps if you're a landscape painter and you paint in large formats, you might want some of these larger flats. Flats are great for laying in expansive washes that cover a lot of area. And again, you can get them in quite large sizes, or quite a variety of sizes. They're good for painting architectural subjects. The square chiseled edges can get you around things like rooftops and down in corners. You can even get angled flats that will help you do that job. I would say that rounds and flats are pretty much the only brushes most watercolor painters will ever need. So what are you looking for when you buy a brush? Watercolor has the one distinctive that you need a brush that handles a very liquid application. Generally speaking, things like oils, gouache, which is an opaque watercolor, and acrylic are more viscous. They're a little thicker, and what that does is that allows you to use a greater variety of brushes. Watercolor, however, excels with the use of natural fibers. For years, the prized fiber or hair for a watercolor brush has been Kolinsky Sable. Kolinsky Sable is some little mink kind of animal that lives in Russia, I think. But it's prized because of the structure of the hair just holds a lot of water, and it allows you, when you paint, to release that water evenly. Now today, you're not limited to just Kolinsky Sable. There are other animal hairs that have been used and produce really, really good results, like squirrel hair. But now they've really improved the synthetic manufacture of faux hair. It's not quite the same as the straight up synthetic brushes that you can get for like craft and acrylic paint. They're usually white bristles. You'll get them in an economy pack of a half a dozen or something like that. Faux hair synthetics are different in that they are synthetic fibers, but they have been made to mimic the characteristics of natural fiber. Get a brush that's designated for watercolor. Is either a blend of synthetic and natural hair, or a synthetic sable, or the pure Kolinsky Sable. That's what you're looking for. And the whole reason for that, they hold a better point. They have better snap when you snap them back when they're wet, and they snap back to a point, and that's all well and good. But I think the greatest reason is water wash and moisture control. It's just far superior. What I have here is a synthetic squirrel hair brush. It's synthetic, but it's been made to imitate the fiber characteristics of squirrel hair, and it's a really good watercolor brush. So let me show you. You get just a very good even application of paint. Now this is a typical acrylic craft type brush. It's just straight up synthetic. It's not meant to imitate natural hair or Sable or Squirrel or anything like that. It's just the typical economy type brush, or it may not even be economy, that you would get for crafting acrylics. Now immediately you can see the difference. Acrylic tends to dump its load, or a good portion of its load, at the beginning of a stroke. Don't worry about that streak. I just got a piece of concentrated pigment on the brush. You may paint with this kind of brush. You may do whole watercolor paintings with it. I've done it for years until I started paying a little more attention to my brushes. And you may not ever really even notice. You know, I could go back with a stroke and redistribute that paint and it'd be okay, but you won't know the difference until you start painting like this, and all of a sudden you just feel like all your washes have more control and they're just coming out better and more even. But that's what you need to look for. So one of the brushes that I don't want you to get confused with are what they call hog's hair or hog bristle brushes. That's a natural hair also, and while you can paint watercolor with it, they're very stiff, they're not soft. They actually make pretty good lifters and scrubbers in watercolor, but when you're applying washes or applying your initial application of paint, not so much. Possible to use them for special effects maybe, I don't know, that's just a kind of a personal experimentation thing. But these are generally intended for acrylics and oils, mainly oils. The giveaway a lot of times is longer handles, you know, for standing back on those easels and painting, and they're designed to move around a lot of thick, stiff paint, or be able to spread and blend stiffer, more viscous paint. So don't get that natural hair confused with the natural or faux naturals that are intended for watercolor, which are softer and more pliable. Now there's a video I'd like you to go see. I don't know this guy, he doesn't know me, he doesn't even know I'm putting this in my video, but I've admired his work. His name is Erik Lundgren. I think he's Swedish. Watch him do this painting. I'm going to put a link down in the description. He does the whole thing with one brush. It looks like a size 22 round. I mean, it's humongous. But it's a very high quality brush, a real squirrel hair and synthetic blend, a very good brush, most of the ones that I've found. And one of my favorite brushes is a natural squirrel hair and synthetic blend. That's the Silver Black Velvet line. But go look at his video. It's fascinating. Just to show you, you don't need a lot of watercolor brushes to start. So guys, if you have any comments or questions, I'd love to have you put those down there in the comment section. Any questions at all? I know this is a very confusing subject for people who've never bought watercolor brushes, don't know anything about them. There's so many of them out there. I'm going to put some links also in the description that list some of the ones that I use, websites you can go to and see the brand names. They will be some of the ones that I pictured earlier in this video, so maybe that'll help you out. But look for those characteristics. Thanks so much, guys. I'm so glad that you're with me. I hope this was a help to you. If it was, like and maybe subscribe, and we will see you next time.